Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. I had been driving for hours, my mind swirling with the monotonous hum of the engine and the dark stretch of road ahead. The highway seemed to stretch endlessly into the night, the only light coming from my car's headlights slicing through the inky blackness. I wasn't planning on stopping, but the last sign I'd seen to the next town was at least 30 miles away. My eyes were heavy, my back aching from sitting too long. I needed to stop, even if only for a few minutes. That's when I saw it. The faint glow of neon flickering at the far end of a desolate parking lot. A gas station, one of those old, run-down places that look like they've been forgotten by time. The kind of place you pass by on the way to somewhere better. But tonight, it was the only choice. I pulled in, the gravel crunching beneath my tires, and the flickering sign above me cast an eerie glow. It buzzed, softly at first, then louder, as if it was struggling to stay on. I felt a chill, despite the warmth of the car. Something about this place didn't sit right with me. Maybe it was the silence, or the way the wind seemed to howl louder as I stepped out, carrying with it a strange scent like old gasoline, and something more metallic, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I glanced toward the back of the station. A man was standing there, just beyond the dim light, his back to me. He wore a faded red shirt, dark jeans, and his hair was a mess, like he hadn't seen a comb in days. His posture was stiff, and he didn't move, not even when I walked toward the door. I waved, but he didn't respond. No nod, no raise of the hand. Nothing. I felt my pulse quicken as I reached for the door handle. It creaked loudly as I opened it, sending another shiver down my spine. The station was quiet, too quiet. I stepped inside, hoping for the familiar scent of fresh coffee or the warmth of a low conversation. But there was nothing. The air inside was thick, heavy, as though the place hadn't been ventilated in years. The fluorescent lights flickered above, casting an unsettling, yellowish hue on everything. I walked to the counter, expecting to see the usual young clerk behind the register. But the counter was empty. There was a door behind the counter that led to what I assumed was a storage room, and I could hear faint footsteps from behind it. The door swung open, and out stepped a man. At first, I thought he was the owner, older than the usual clerks I'd seen at late-night stops. His clothes were stained, his face gaunt, as if he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were sunken, with dark circles beneath them. He looked like a man who had been trapped in the same nightmare for far too long. "Can I help you?" His voice cracked when he spoke, like a radio on the fritz, cutting in and out. It felt wrong, somehow, like he was asking a question he didn't really want the answer to. I nodded, trying to mask my unease. "Just a coffee, please." He handed me a mug, but his hand trembled. The cup rattled as I took it. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that something was off about the whole place. I glanced around again, half expecting to see someone else behind the counter. Maybe a woman, maybe the person who had been there before. "Where's the woman who was here earlier?" I asked before I could stop myself. The man's eyes went wide, and for a moment, I thought he might not answer. His gaze shifted to the corner of the room, where I thought I saw movement, a flicker of something in the shadows. His hand tightened around the edge of the counter, his knuckles white. She, she doesn't come back, he said slowly, his voice almost a whisper. Not after midnight. Don't ask about her again. My stomach twisted. I didn't know what he meant, but I had a feeling I wasn't going to like the answer if I pressed him. I wanted to leave, to get in my car and drive away, but I couldn't. My feet felt frozen, my body unwilling to move. There was something about the way he spoke that held me there, like his words were laced with something sinister, something that I could feel crawling up my spine. I forced a smile, though it fell hollow, and muttered, "Thanks," before I turned to leave. But as I walked back toward the door, I felt a cold gust of air brush past me, carrying with it the faint scent of something rotten, something decaying. I paused. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't coming from the door. It was coming from behind me. I looked back at the man, and he was staring at me now, his eyes wide and unblinking. He wasn't moving. He was just watching me, his face unreadable. But then, the oddest thing happened. I heard his voice again, not from his mouth, but in my mind. "Don't drive off." Not yet. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to turn around, to ask him what he meant, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. Something in the back of my mind told me to get out. And fast. I turned as quickly as I could, and practically ran back to my car. My heart hammered in my chest as I fumbled with the keys. The wind howled louder now, almost drowning out everything else. The lights on the sign above the station flickered again, casting strange shadows across the lot. I slammed the door shut, my hands shaking, and I didn't even look back before I started the engine. The tires screeched as I peeled out of the lot, my foot pressing hard on the gas. But even as I sped away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone, that someone was watching me, waiting for me to look back. And when I finally did, just a brief glance in the rearview mirror, I saw him. The man. He was standing by the door, still pressed against the glass. But this time, he wasn't just watching. He was smiling, but not with his lips. No, his eyes were smiling. A chill ran through me, colder than the wind, colder than anything I'd ever felt. I didn't know who or what that man was, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back there. Not ever. And for the rest of the drive, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. Story 2. I've worked at this gas station for 3 years now, and in that time I thought I'd seen it all. The bizarre customers, the late night drunks, the crazy people who wander in off the highway in the middle of nowhere, asking for directions to places that don't exist. Nothing fazed me anymore. But last week, a man came in who changed everything. It was a quiet night, one of those cold, bone-chilling nights where the wind howls like it's got something to prove. I was working the late shift, as usual. The kind of shift where time slows down to a crawl, and you're just waiting for it to end. The hum of the refrigeration unit in the back was the only sound filling the air. A constant buzz that seemed to sink into your skin and burrow there. It was like the world outside had disappeared, leaving me alone in this little gas station in the middle of nowhere. I had just finished wiping down the counter when I noticed him. He walked in without a sound, his presence almost unnoticed until he was standing right there. I looked up, trying to hide the exhaustion in my voice. It had been a long day. "Good evening," I said, offering a small smile, hoping it would be enough to get him to leave quickly. "What can I get for you?" He didn't answer. At first, I thought maybe he hadn't heard me, but when I looked up, I saw him standing there, towering over me. He was tall, taller than anyone I'd ever seen, and dressed in a thick black coat that seemed to swallow up the dim light of the station. His face was obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, and the darkness under it seemed to shift like it was alive, like it was trying to hide something from me. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something about him didn't sit right. It was more than just his silence. It was the way he moved, slow, deliberate, like every step had a weight behind it. He didn't answer, and I noticed a small, almost imperceptible twitch in his hands as he reached for the cooler. The gloves he wore were thick, almost as if he was afraid to touch anything. The night wasn't that cold, but his fingers were covered in what looked like old, worn leather. I try not to stare at them, but I couldn't help it. They looked wrong, like they weren't quite human, like they'd been stretched and misshapen over time. He grabbed a bottle of water, something about it too simple, too normal. But as he brought it to the counter, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. There was something in his eyes now, something I hadn't seen before. As he placed the bottle down, I noticed his fingers were still twitching, almost uncontrollably. His gaze flicked up to mine, just for a second. I froze. The world seemed to stop. The way he looked at me, like he was peering straight into my soul. His eyes, they weren't right. They were pale, too pale. No color, no light, just endless, empty blackness. His pupils were wide, completely dilated, swallowing up everything. There was nothing human about them, nothing at all. I forced myself to blink, to shake myself out of the trance I was in, but it was too late. The moment was already etched into my brain, burned there. I don't know what it was that made me do it, but I handed him his change. His hand didn't twitch when he grabbed the bills. It was too smooth, too precise. He took the water, his grip tight, and without another word, turned and walked out. But just before he left, he paused in the doorway, and for a moment, I thought he was going to turn back and say something. Instead, he looked at me, really looked at me, and I swear to God, his face twisted, just for a split second, like something monstrous, something terrible, lurked just underneath his skin. The smile that crept across his lips wasn't a smile at all. It was more like a snarl, a mocking grin, like he knew something I didn't. And in that moment, I knew that I wasn't just dealing with a strange customer. This wasn't a man. It couldn't be. I watched him leave, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming too fast. The door shut behind him with a soft click, and then there was silence. It was like the station had swallowed him whole, leaving nothing but the cold air and the humming of the machines. I tried to shake it off. I tried to tell myself I was just being paranoid, but the feeling stayed with me long after he was gone. The way he looked, the way he didn't speak, the way his eyes burned into mine. It was enough to leave a sick feeling in the pit of my stomach. I finished up my shift in a daze, the hours stretching on with no sign of him returning. The next morning, I came in early to finish cleaning up before the day rush. When I stepped behind the counter, I saw something strange. It was small, folded neatly, almost too neat for something that had been left in a hurry. It was a piece of paper, just a scrap, but it was there, wedged under the register. I picked it up, unfolded it, and read the single word scrawled across the page. Leave. My blood went cold. I looked around, half expecting the man to be standing there, watching me from the shadows. but the station was empty. No one else had been in. It was just me and that damn piece of paper. I'd worked here for years, and I'd never seen anything like it. Never felt anything like it. I tried to tell myself it was just a prank, just some sick joke. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I knew that whatever had happened the night before, it wasn't normal. And that man, whoever he wasn't just a strange customer. He was something else, something older, something that shouldn't have been in this world. I'm still here, working the same shift, but the unease hasn't left. I haven't been able to shake the feeling that I made a mistake by staying after dark, by opening up the gas station for another lonely shift. And every time the door opens, I can't help but wonder if he'll come back. If he'll be standing there, that twisted smile on his face, and that terrible darkness in his eyes, waiting for me to make my move. And then, maybe you'll be too late. Story 3. It was nearing 3 a.m. when I finished mopping the floor of the gas station, my usual late-night ritual. I've been working this shift for years, and the quiet had become my second skin. There's something soothing about the hum of fluorescent lights and the low murmur of the refrigerator, the kind of sound you learn to ignore after a while. But tonight, the quiet was wrong. I wiped the last corner of the floor, the mop dragging across the linoleum with a familiar squeak, and I heard it, distant but unmistakable, the roar of an engine, louder than it should have been for a late-night fuel delivery. Most of the trucks that came through here were old, sluggish things that rattled when they idled. But this one felt different. Too loud, too insistent. My stomach twisted. I glanced through the window, pulling the blinds just a fraction to get a better look. The truck was parked under the flickering overhead light, its silhouette distorted by the yellow haze. It didn't look like any of the regular fuel trucks. For one, the logo on the side was faint, like it had been washed away by time. A rusted yellow, just barely visible against the dark paint. And the shape, it seemed like it could have been an old company logo, but I didn't recognize it. The engine was still running, a constant thrum that rattled my bones. The truck hadn't moved. The driver hadn't moved. I squinted into the dark, trying to catch some sign of life. There was nothing, no movement. Just the truck, the man, staring, or maybe not staring. I couldn't tell because I couldn't see his eyes. I didn't know what drew me to it. Maybe it was the creeping unease in the pit of my stomach, or the way the night seemed to press in on me, heavy and thick like the air before a storm. But I walked outside anyway. The wind cut through my jacket as I stepped into the cold night, biting at my skin with icy fingers. It was late, too late for this. There shouldn't have been anyone else out here, but there was. I walked toward the truck, every step feeling like it took longer than the last. The gravel crunched underfoot, sharp in the stillness of the night. As I got closer, I saw the door swing open. The man inside had finally moved. Or maybe he hadn't. Maybe he had been waiting for me. He climbed out slowly, deliberately, wearing a thick jumpsuit. The kind of outfit you'd expect from someone who worked with machinery, someone who didn't care about the cold. But his face was hidden behind a mask. No, not a mask. Not like something you'd wear for Halloween. It was more like something that covered his entire face. A smooth, featureless sheet of black plastic, like he wasn't even human anymore. My gut churned to the thought. He didn't speak, didn't acknowledge me at all. Can I help you? I asked, my voice a little shaky, despite trying to sound calm. He didn't respond. Instead, he reached into the back of the truck. The movements were jerky, like something was wrong with him, like his body wasn't working properly. His hand closed around something large, something rusted. I could barely make it out in the dim light, but it looked like a fuel container. Old, huge, and in need of repair. "What's this for?" I demanded, instinctively taking a step back. I didn't know why I was asking. It didn't make sense. Fuel was delivered here every night, but this was wrong. Everything about this felt wrong. He didn't answer. He just kept dragging the container out from the truck, his movements slow, deliberate. "Hey," I said again, my voice louder this time. "You're not supposed to be making deliveries this late." That's when he finally looked at me, slowly, deliberately. And when he did, I felt my breath catch in my throat. His eyes weren't normal. They were hollow, empty, like they hadn't blinked in years. And his skin was pale, sickly, like it had been drained of life. I wanted to turn and run, but my body wouldn't obey. My feet were frozen to the ground, like the earth had somehow claimed me, held me in place. I could feel the cold creeping up my spine as a faint whisper came from the truck, low and unintelligible. It was a voice, or several voices, and they all seemed to be speaking at once. Muffled, too quiet, too distorted. "Please," I whispered to myself, not sure if I was trying to convince him or myself. "What's happening?" I could hear the voices clearer now, the words too far away to make sense of. But they were speaking to me. They were trying to tell me something. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as the man in the jumpsuit stepped toward me, dragging the heavy container with him. "You shouldn't have come out here," he said. And his voice, it wasn't his voice. It was something else. A rasp, a groan, a guttural thing, like it was coming from deep within the earth itself. It didn't sound human. It didn't even sound alive. That's when the world around me seemed to tilt. The air went thin, and the whispers got louder, all around me, circling in my mind, clawing at my thoughts. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my hands clammy, my legs shaking. I couldn't breathe. In that moment, the truck seemed to grow darker, the shadows pulling closer. The ground beneath my feet felt unstable, as though I were standing at the edge of a cliff, teetering on the edge of something awful. Then, just as suddenly as it had all started, I snapped out of it. My instincts kicked in, and I turned, bolting back toward the door. My legs weren't moving fast enough. The gravel was sharp, biting in my shoes as I stumbled, tripping over my own feet, desperate to get back inside. I slammed the door behind me, my heart thudding in my chest. My breath was coming in ragged gasps, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. I don't know why, but I just knew that if I did, I'd see something worse than I could ever imagine. I stood there for a long time, just staring at the door, waiting for the truck to start up, to drive off, to leave me in peace. But it didn't. The engine just stopped. The silence was deafening. I peeked out the window, and there was nothing. No truck, no man, nothing. I should have felt relief, but all I could feel was dread. My eyes scanned the lot again, and then I saw it. On the ground where the truck had been parked, a footprint, deep and wide, like it had been made by something far too large to be human. The next morning, I checked the records. There was no fuel delivery scheduled for that night. No truck matching the description. No delivery driver, even close to what I'd seen. And the man, his face is burned into my memory. Every time I try to find him, every time I look him up in some database or search for a delivery report, I find nothing. He doesn't exist. Not in any records. Not in any system. I don't know what happened that night. Maybe I'm losing my mind. Maybe I dreamed it all. But there's one thing I know for sure. I've never gone outside after dark since. And I never plan to again.